told me, I think it was Rebbe you said, one of those years, so it's already, it's about 6 weeks before my birthday. They never said to me, Farbrengen Shabbos. Until then, after that, anytime I wrote, I have a birthday, I wrote to the Rebbe what day of the week it was. But I didn't know. It's a Shvat. There's another 40 days. Aboim Yoim, according to Mesilas Havlat. So when I didn't know what to tell the Rebbe. He said, "Is your Meledes on Shabbos?" And I didn't know. And the Rebbe opened up a drawer, and in it there was a luach of Chodesh Emes with a picture of the Rebbe on it. And he opened up this luach, and it said, "Yes, it's Shabbos. You should chazer a maimah for the Bochrim or for the Balabatim. That's Shabbos." That's a Bocha who had a birthday on a Friday. Whoever, the Rebbe very often will talk about the day of your birthday. I know many Bochrim whose birthday fell out on a Friday. Chof Order never falls on a Friday. But a Bochrim whose birthday fell on a Friday, that year, very often the Rebbe would tell them, "You lav dafke that you maver the Seder, shnai mikveh ve'echet taglim before Shabbos. Could be you do it Friday night or Shabbos morning. But on the week of your birthday, the day of your Yom Haledes, you should do it on the day itself." And that's negated to all of us. Because what it means is that on your Yom Haledes, the way I understand it, is on Yom Haledes, you're looking for extra zuchosim, extra mitzvahs. You're going to be Maver Seder anyway. And if you're not going to take that hour out in the middle of that Friday, you'll be doing something useful that time as well. But Rebbe L'Choida is saying it's an Inyan to chap an extra mitzvah. We know this after Tovshin Memches, when there was the Mugadik Sicha, and in Chelik Beis of Sefer HaSichas Tovshin Memches, it has 10 minhagim related to Yom Haledes. Like, for example, saying a Shechayonu. Did you manage? Even when you saw me. You know, there's saying it Yom Tilim, v'chuli. Well, extra thing, extra nigla, extra chassidus, extra tzedakah, before shachas ha-mincha, Farbrengen, that's it. And so the Yom Haledes is a very important day for everybody. And when it's not the Yom Haledes, you might think my Yom Haledes is 6, 7, 8 months ahead. It's a need of a hachana to it. Because the Inyan of a Yom Haledes is similar to the Inyan of Yitzias Mitzrayim. There's a Yud Alef Nissan letter of the Rebbe. And 1 year, that was the theme that the Rebbe spoke about, is that Yitzias Mitzrayim, which is in Nissan, around the Rebbe's time, is the Inyan of Yom Haledes. How do you know it? It's a pasuk in Torah Shebeksav. Where? Where's the pasuk? Where?
It's in Miketz, no?
Where?
Miketz?
Miketz?
No, it's... Yeah, Miketz.
That Yitzias Mitzrayim is compared to Hayulodo.
Oh.
I'll tell you, it's in another sefer, which you might know. There's a sefer, an old ancient sefer. It's called Haggadah Shel Pesach. The Haggadah brings down a pasuk from Yecheskel, Perik Yud Zayin. You can check it out. All of the psukim in Magid are from Yecheskel, Perik Yud Zayin, and it speaks there about the Inyan of Yom Haledes. Why? What is so special about a Yom Haledes? What's so special? A child The nails and the hair are ready an hour before, a day before the child is born. It's a Vlad Gomer. So what's so special about the day that somebody is born? And the answer is because the Uber, the child before he's born, is in the mother's womb. And you cannot live without sustenance, without any nutrition. And you cannot live without oxygen. But the baby doesn't breathe and doesn't eat. The mouth is not working yet. So he's oichel, the expression of the Chazal is, oichel mima she'imo oicheles. He eats what his mother eats. In other words, her diet, it has to sustain him. That's what they say when a woman is expecting, she should be more careful about her lifestyle, including the food that one eats. And breathes. She breathes in, that's how he gets it. When the child is born, hapasuach nistam v'astumais niftachan. That the order changes. In other words, the Rebbe said this in the Zichronos with Chayelo. In other words, birth means becoming independent. Until then, he was living from his mother. And that day is the big day because it means that that's the day that you became a person. Not just something that's going to depend on somebody else. And that's what Pesach is. That's what Yetzias Mitzrayim is. It says in a pasuk in Voice Chanan, L'kachas lo'goy mikerev goy. The Rebbe took a nation out of a nation. It means the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, and they were exposed to that culture, and they were vulnerable to that culture. And they came out of Mitzrayim, and the Rebbe said, now you're mine. Now you are a Yid. That's what you, and you don't need anything else. You have the Eibishter. So anyway, l'chaim. The whole thing was Shnas HaTzlacha. Everybody here was a birthday this year. Bracha, Pesach, Tuzayin. We should all go out of Mitzrayim. We should all go in one of the most beautiful concepts in Chassidus is the beer of Yetzias Mitzrayim. That you go from Meitza El Amecha, from bad to good. But the real beautiful thing, it's revolutionary, is a thing which is, what happens with a tzaddik? How is he makayim the mitzvah of going out of Mitzrayim? Any suggestion? How is a tzaddik doing the avodah of Yetzias Mitzrayim? Person who has abandoned it. Everything he's like, he's doing everything he has to do. It's the union of Meitzorim de Kedusha, it's called. It means, even though you've achieved a lot, and you're doing very well, and you didn't get there by itself, you struggled. Some things you struggled a drop, some things you struggled a lot, some things took your time, you reached a certain level, and you say, Baruch Hashem, it's been already so long, that I've been keeping this and thing, or I've not been doing such and such thing. It's a very great achievement. It's a wonderful achievement. But comes against Chassidus, and it says, it's something that you're aiming for Ein Sof. It's a connection to the Eibishter. It's a connection to the Rebbe. It's a connection to the infinite. And no matter how good you are, there can be more. That's a revolutionary concept. It's called, in Yechidus, it's called Yetzias Mitzrayim de Kedusha. That is Mitzorim de Kedusha, where something is as it should be. But you're not happy with it. Because you're happy, but you're not satisfied. The Rebbe told a Bacha in my day, Tavshin Yutes, that's 66 years ago. The Bacha was Rabbi Ichmeir Gerari. He's today a mashpia he's a Zayda of mashpiyim already, I think. Anyway, so And the Rebbe gave him tasks. The yeshiva gave him, he was a brilliant bacher. He knew my mother, he knew this. And the Rebbe always gave him something to do. So one time he was in Yechidus for his birthday, Yom Haledes, and he told the Rebbe, you know, you must be really disappointed in me. You're never happy with what I'm doing. So the Rebbe told him, I remember how, I read it, the story, him telling it in interviews, but I'm going to say a sentence that I didn't see in any interview, but I remember him saying it back in your test. The Rebbe said, "Ichoba teva." I have a certain nature. Das ist a teva, was ich will nicht bei. It's a nature that I don't want to change. See, this is to change a teva. This is a teva which I don't want to change. Namely, I'm happy with everything you do. Aber ich will noch. I want more. To put it in English words, it means I'm happy with everything, but I'm not satisfied with anything. That's called geula. Geula is an infinite goal. You cannot say, I'm aiming, I'm going to learn, I'm going to get smicha, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that, I'm going to become a doctor, you'll have deal. Anything in the world, I'm going to go and earn enough money so I can buy myself a little cottage, a house, and this and that, whatever. Any goal you have in life. People have a goal and they're happy, and then they sit back. And comes to gain chassidus, and that's what Pesach is, that's what Yud Alef is. It means you can always do more. And it's not in chas v'sholem in a way which is ungrateful or not validating what you did already. Adarabba, you're someone who is so capable. And I want to help you to become even bigger than you are and better than you are and to achieve more than you achieve. Chaim. I ask for questions all the time. And I didn't ask this time. Not because I forgot it. I like to ask questions because I want everybody to participate, to hear what they want to say. So if anybody wants, you can say. On the day of Tisha B'Av, Tavshin Yud Ches. That's going to be now 67 years ago. It's coming Tisha B'Av. And I heard it from Rabbi Sholem Ber Gurkov. He's a chassid, a goyin, chassidish yid betachlis in Montreal. He's from Rosh originally. And he was a bacher then in Manchester. And they did the Tahara there. So they dealt with all the things. These bachrim together with Rabbanim, Rabbi Shem Tov, Rabbi Tzir Shem Tov, etc., etc. So I was fascinated. I was just my first year in Lubavitch Yeshiva. I was a few years already learning Chassidus, but it was my first year. And just the whole fact that I had a relative and this. So he said, she said that three things I remember from there. One was that they asked the Rebbe what to bury him in, and the Rebbe said in his Shabbos Dikatalis. The Midian Shabbos Talis. And the second thing was that that she said that last Pesach, which was a few weeks before he was nifter, he followed the Rebbe's Haggadah very, very closely. Tried to keep up with the things that the Rebbe said in the Haggadah. And she found it difficult. That I didn't say in the interview. And the third thing was that when he would write to the Rebbe a letter, it's a brother writing to a brother. He didn't write like a brother to a brother. He wrote like a chassid, because if there was any mistake or something, he would start again. He wanted to send it like neat and nice. Anyway, that's for Farbrengen. Okay, good. Ask any question you want. So, I want to talk about his kashrus. I just heard a story this week from Rabbi Naftali Lowenthal, Tali. And he read it that Rabbi Grona said that in the tough shin years, in the years before the Istalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe, somehow or another, he and Rabbi Schusterman, he didn't know which, I think was probably Rabbi Schusterman later from Chicago, Rabbi Yudel Krinsky's brother-in-law. It's about the same age. They were Bachrim, and the Rebbe asked them to produce a maimah of the Frierdiker Rebbe. I imagine, he didn't know exactly what, I was probably, they were mimeographing. You know what, they used to type the maimah onto a stencil, and then you print it, we roll it, you know what that is? You know what that is? What?
Faxing machine.
And they said, yeah, it's like an old-fashioned WhatsApp. But no. A mimeograph it was a thing made of rubber or of a plastic or something, a sheet, and you typed or you wrote onto it with holes, and then it went onto a drum, which you turned around. Well, sometimes they had electronic ones, and it had ink in it. So it would print out this Hanachos of the Rebbe in Tav Shin Chav Beis until Tav Shin Yud Tes, till through Yud Ches, is only typed from the originals that he got. And there were Bachrim who did it to get spending money. They would type for the other Bachrim in the yeshiva, and they would type 20 copies. And they sold it for 1 cent a page, I think, which was a lot of money in those days. It means a Farbrengen can cost you 50 cents, or a big Farbrengen or something. And the first page wasn't cheaper, but more expensive. The second page was the best. Because the first one sometimes you had to type very hard. Second page, they charged maybe 2 cents. I don't know. It was some kind of the way they sold it. And the 20th page must have been cheaper. But you need a pair of glasses to read it. And so they made like that, a very thin onion paper, it was called. Because the Rebbe did not allow them to print anything that was built in Muga. And that changed, that was upgraded in Tavshin Yud Tes. They used a spirit stencil. That's what they used also in Lubavitch, something similar. In Tafresh Samach, the Kuntis Umayim came out. Not exactly the same. And that came out Yud Tes, Chav, and Chav Aleph. I think Chav Beis was the first one when they actually had stencils. Chav Beis, Chav Gimel. Then later they started printing just for Bilti Muga. So,
when did the Rebbe start
what?
allowing Bilti
What's the
Muga?
question? I can't hear that outside.
When did the Rebbe start allowing Bilti Muga?
You're moving over to my wrong ear.
When did the Rebbe start allowing Bilti Muga?
He allowed before. The question is, when did he allow to print it, and to what extent? When it became public that it's really it's something which is not muga. Sometimes the Rebbe was a goyin olam b'chol chadrei Torah in every area. If you read through I tried to read since Gimel Tammuz a little bit of Igris every day. It was the pure breadth of the, but there's also a depth. I saw in the Hanochas, I went in there before Gimel Tammuz, they were typing up Hanochas. It was a Bilti Muga Maimah. It says Bilti Muga. But they wrote, Tmidim Kisidram Umusafim Kihilchasam. And the Rebbe made a circle around Musafim Kihilchasam, and he said, B'kavona, Hishmadeti, it said. Hishmadeti. I left this out, those 2 words, purposely. Because for that Indian, this didn't fit. Another time I saw they would prepare, suggested, the Rebbe added whole paragraphs, and sometimes they took all these long ha'oras which the Mareches would make was 99% taken from the Rebbe Sikha somewhere else. But I saw one which was a whole big thing, a whole big, and the Rebbe said it's not relevant here, for example. So muga, built-in muga, is like, it can be a word that's not, and sometimes it can be much more than that. It can be something which is wrong. Rabbi Chitrik in Tzfas told me, he writes an article every week in the Kvar Chabad, Zudati, Yurak Dati. And he wrote something, and he wrote a story from the Gemara, and the pshat was not 100% correct. It was about Reb Shmuel and Shilas, and that he went once in 13 years to go home and see what's happening with his property, with his fields or whatever. And someone told him, "How did you leave your Talmidim?" And he said, "Dai to Yalayim." But anyway, so somebody in this article, Rabbi Chitrik had it somehow not exactly as it is, and he was called up by a Goyin Olam, a very, very famous, not Chabad person. He told me who it was. A very famous person who was bucking everything. And he said, "Did the Rebbe say this?" He asked, this pshat. And Rabbi Chitrik told me that it was not Rabbi Chitrik, it was a quote from a different publication which had a slightly wrong pshat in that Gemara. And he said, I took it from there. So this Goyin, Olam, said, if the Lubavitcher Rebbe says that pshat, I would have to horror and find out how it worked. That's how much he trusted that the Rebbe. He said, but I just wanted to check out, was that what the Rebbe really said? So you see what can happen. This is a Gemara Yudua. So the thing that Rebbe was Magia. There's times the Rebbe, a thing which was Muga. The Rebbe said, the Rebbe once said in a Maima, the Hanocha came from Reb Yoel. And the Rebbe said, I didn't say this, a certain thing. And they said, somehow it sounded like it. In the end, the Rebbe asked for the tape to be played for him. And Reb Yoel said the Rebbe listened to the tape like his head, like very, very deep concentration. And the Rebbe heard it, and the Rebbe said, I can see where you got that impression from. But that wasn't what I was saying. This is Rebbe Yoel. So, later years, as long as you wrote built-in Mugad, in those days the rule was every page had to say built-in Mugad, even though it was not printed. Now, later, they printed it. As long as it said on the cover, this Sikh is built-in Mugad. So the world knows that this is prepared by Chassidim.
So what year did the Rebbe give Rishus?
Pardon?
My question is, what year did the Rebbe give Rishus?
What year? So I said, he allowed it to be typed, and then in Tafshin Yutes, he allowed it to be on the blue, it was called a spirit stencil. What happened? You would write on a paper, on a it looked like a piece of paper, but the back of the paper was like carbon paper. It had some kind of ink, and it could be of any color, those pages. And we made the camp magazines, the Gan Yisrael, I remember, because I was an editor in Montreal. That was Yutes, Chof, and Chof Aleph. If I would known, I would have brought one here today. From the Pesach stuff, I'll find a Pesach Maimah from those spirit probably. From Chof Beis, the Rebbe allowed stencil, still not printed, mamish. Printed, I don't remember exactly when. I don't remember. It was probably, maybe, I don't know. That when things came out like, and much more. It's fantastic how much of the Rebbe's works was Pidyon Shvuyim. people had, because they wrote notes, I wrote for about 6 months. I didn't write my Hanocha with the Rebbe. I wrote for Chazorah. Rebbe Yoel, in the summer, Chazorah was after the Farbrengen, and in the winter, Chazorah was Motzi Shabbos. 10 o'clock at night, and the Rebbe Yoel would Chazor the Farbrengen, and I'm able to write very, very quickly. I was able. And I would write very, very quickly what he wrote, scribble it, and then I went home. I lived in Williamsburg. I had a room in the dormitory, but I had my house. It was a half hour. I went home, and I sat through the night, usually. And I'd write it out very, very neat. And Sunday, I took it to the post office and sent it to Benoit, to Osher's Island Gold. And so for those months that I did it, a Bacha here in Kingsley once asked me, so those, after Gimel Tamid, they asked people for Hanachas. So I gave them to Chaim Shalbrook, and somebody asked me to see the Hanocha of this and this Shabbos. It was a Chodesh, Taka. The Chodesh Tov Shulchan Beis. Very, very, very long maimah. And I faxed it to him. You know what a fax is? So people gave those things later on, and the Ibn Abed, and sometimes you can tell, because the Rebbe said what the maimah is. When Rebbe Yoel gave a chazorah, there was either a full-blown chazorah. I just wrote what he said, but sometimes he had to leave, he had to go, but he said in the Chodesh, and he could say in less than a page what would take 5 pages for him to write, to be able to flesh out, because it was meyusar on a maimah of the Alter Rebbe. So that's all part of the thing. But the Nekuda which the Rebbe adds is not that you have the Alter Rebbe's maimah plus a Nekuda. It gives you a whole different perspective in the whole 10 pages. But Rabbi Yoel was, a person was able to operate on that. Hi, everybody here, by the way. Yeah. So anyway, those are the questions. You can ask other questions also. Now, so anyway, come back to the story. So the Rebbe asked Rabbi Grona and Rabbi Schusterman, they were Bochrim, to prepare this maimah for Hafotzer. And this was Yud Gimel Nissan. And maybe it started Yud Beis or even Yud Alef, I don't know, but they were working on it. And it was Oil Arbosa. And they were working and working. And Mrs. Grona, nobody here remembers her. Menucha Rochel Grona was Rabbi Grona's mother. Was a tzadekis, an anicle of the original Menucha Rochel, of the Mittler Rebbe's daughter. And she called up to 770. It was a public phone, and she said, "I need you at home. Come home. It's Erev Pesach. I need a pair of hands." So then the Rebbe came down from the second floor where the Frierdiker Rebbe was, and the Rebbe said, yeah. So the Rebbe said that he was by the Shver, by the Frierdiker Rebbe, by the Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe asked, "Is that maimah going to be out for Pesach?" And the Rebbe said to the Rebbe the Shver, "Yeah, the Bacham are working on it. It will be out." So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, "Yasher Koyach." So the Rebbe said, and then Grona told the Rebbe that his mother had called him up. So the Rebbe said, for a Yasher Koyach for the Rebbe, it's worth, tell your mother this is a Yasher Koyach from the Rebbe. And that's in itself a big thing. And what it means is that comes without this is the time of Mivtzoyim now. Nivtza Matzah in Befrat. You want to know what is kashis to the Rebbe? One of my Yom it was on this Living Torah I just saw last night. I missed half of it. About how to be a makusha to the Rebbe. They had about 4 or 5 people, and all of them, one was myself, that I saw, one was Rabbi Vogel, one was Chaim Shol Deitch in Yerushalayim, and 1 or 2 others. And the Rebbe, all of them, the Hatzad HaShav, what the Rebbe said, it's learning my mama, learning what I learned. It had to do with harving and learning. You connect your mind to the Rebbe. Can you imagine what it means? You learn the Rebbe's Torah. It elevates your whole mind, your whole perspective, your whole life. Your Gashmiistic life becomes more successful. Your way of thinking, the way you look at the world, you can't push it, you have a grip on life. But the biggest reward is Ayashakar from the Rebbe. You have Ayashkashus. But besides the learning, there's also sharing. For the Rebbe, something you don't share is a selfish act. We have to learn when it has to be not time to say this, and all this. I asked the Rebbe once in Yechidus, in Tavshich of Gimel. I was in 770, one of the only guys that understood English. And used to go to universities and to youth groups. I went to many, many places for Shabbat. I went away 5-10 times a year to universities for Shabbat. Then, with Rabbi Beryl Baumgarten, he ran Tzach. So I wrote to the Rebbe, maybe I'm going too much, and maybe I'm not going enough. I never asked anybody. I just went. When they asked me, "Will you go?" I went. I loved going. I loved going, and seeing how you can get people interested in Chassidus, in the Rebbe, in all these things. But I asked the Rebbe, "Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing?" And in the Yechidus, the Rebbe said to me, since whenever you go, you check it out with it's according to the Hayro of Hanholos HaYeshiva, do exactly what you're doing till now. In other words, sometimes there's this certain time which is set aside from Mivtzoyim, that's Chus L'Sei HaYeshiva, that's your own, it's a Rishis de L'Sata, a special schar for that. That's the Bachrim created that. Before they started Mivtzoyim, in the Tavshin, late Chavs and the Lameds, Friday afternoon, you wrote a letter home, you went to the laundry, people did exercises, they did different things, people didn't. Someone took a nap, so he'll be able to stay up late Friday night. And then the Bachrim were Makdish. In other yeshivas, you don't have this. This is something to women. The Bachrim spend the Friday afternoon. It's the most precious time because it's your time. And they're giving it to other Yidden. This is Mamash Mashiach Satan. This is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Sometimes you're doing it and you don't realize what a big achievement it is. And you see Bachrim who get I just read the story about a Bacha this year in Purim. They went to some shtetl Dotton, and then they got an Uber back. No, they got a ride back, and then they found out that the driver was actually Jewish. So one of the Bachrim, it's an hour's drive or something. One of the Bachrim said, you should hear the Megillah. It's a Purim night, just a couple of weeks ago. So the guy says, I got to go home, sorry. He says, I'm going that way also. And he went with him in the car, and he said, and he read the Megillah for 30 minutes, whatever it took him to read the Megillah, quick as he could in the car. And the guy listened, captive audience. Then when he finished, he said, okay, this is where I got to get off. And he took an Uber back. I had mamish gashmiz diketainuk from such a story. The Bacha wanted to see somebody should do a mitzvah, not his own Gan Eden. He was doing it for somebody else. Now, somebody came to the Rebbe, and he said he had a major, substantial sum of money that he wants to donate. He was not a Chabad Chassid. I want to donate it to one of your projects. I mean, talk about a very, very large sum of money. And the Rebbe said, donate it to Mivtza Matzah. Maybe in Eretz Yisrael. I don't remember if that was the place was part of the story. But the Rebbe said, give the money for Mivtza Matzah. He says, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like something like a big building or some kind of a thing. So they were saying, a big building, a thing, and you have to go to somewhere else. You're asking me what's called big. To me, Mivtza Matzah is big. Now, there's a shaliach here in England by the name of Michael Danov, and he told somebody this story. So he just mentioned it. And this man said, wow, I hereby sponsor all your whole Mivtza Matzah for this year. That's great, isn't it? And everyone's thinking, how can I get a guy like that? The answer is that he probably cultivated that guy for the last 5 years. It's not out of the blue. He knows that this is somebody who's going to do it, metenta metfis. He's impressed with what he does, and he's happy to be part of it. So I'm telling you this story because I want to tell you a story of the Rebbe, which I would imagine you never heard ever before. I heard this story from my son-in-law, Rabbi Shimon Posner, in Rancho Mirage, California. Some of you might know him. You know him?
My sister is married to David.
Your sister's married?
To David.
Oh! You're a right port?
Yeah.
Wow! Ben Milka.
Yeah.
That's the Silver Kiddush. She's not the only Chaya Mushka we have in the family by a long shot, but she's the only Bas Milka. Anyway, so, all right, so Rabbi Shimon Posner told me this story. He's in Rancho Mirage, and there is like a lot of people come there from Los Angeles. Many of them have a house there with a swimming pool. We use as a mikveh, yontif, whatever. Or from Chicago. A lot of people, to Gevidim in Chicago, Rancho Mirage, to a certain type of people, is they have their summer or their weekend house over there. But there's also people from the East Coast that come. And a lot of Fruma. So he told me there was somebody there, I think a Satma or something like Hungarian Chassid from Vineland, the Kashrus, a very, very big Kashrus operation in Vineland. Glad Kosher. And the man said, I'll tell you a story of the Rebbe. Story of the Rebbe. That he heard, I believe, from his father, his parents. I'm almost sure it was from his parents. A story that happened in the 1940s, before the Rebbe came to America. In 1940, 41, Tafshin, when the Rebbe was in Paris, or in France, and the Nazis occupied Europe, and it was a very, very frightening, dangerous time. And here's this frum couple, and they couldn't get matzahs, hand matzahs. It was very hard to find a place. It wasn't that popular. They never made it popular in the whole world. Even when I was a boy in New York, there was 2 or 3 places where they made baked matzahs. Today there's 100 places. Anyway, and so with all of the pressures, it was very hard to get matzah. And one night, about 1 o'clock in the morning, a knock on the door, and they were mamish terrified. In the middle of the war with occupation. So the man says, who's there? And the voice says, it was the Rebbe. He says his name. The Rebbe says, then a young man, 40 years, under 40 years old. He said, MS, said his name. So I answer Yid. They open up the door, and they say, Yeah, what can I help you at 1 o'clock in the morning? What are you coming for? So the Rebbe said, have you managed to find a place where you can get shmura matzah? And they thought that the Rebbe was like something wrong with him. Coming at 1 o'clock in the morning, a question again, where can I get matzah? They said, no, we haven't found it yet. We're very frum, they were Cherished, Hungarian. So the Rebbe said, look, you're trying, and I'm trying. If you find somewhere where they have, please get to me also. And if I find a place where they have matzahs, where they're baking matzahs, I'll get for you. Fine. And he left, and the couple said to themselves, a strange man. It was like a funny kind of thing. Anyway, Al Kaponim, about a week, 10 days later, 1 o'clock in the morning, knock on the door. And they got scared again. Who's there? And he says, and us. So they said, I don't want to use the word that they used. The same, whatever. And they opened up the door, and the Rebbe had a package. He said, I managed to get, and these are yours. He gave him. Mivtza Matzah. Under Nazi occupation. I tell that because the Rebbe, they say somebody asked the Rebbe once in France, it was likely that same year. They asked the Rebbe, do you know, where did you get matzahs? And he said, I don't have, just after the Seder, and then we had potatoes or something. People didn't have. There was no matzahs. I saw it in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. They asked us to bring in matzah, to send in matzah. It's perishable, it gets used out. And Baruch Hashem, there were hundreds of Baal Tshuvas, so they had to, you had to just eat fruits and vegetables. Any other questions? Okay, do you want to hear another story? I'm seeing another nigga. From?
Rebbe Seder.
Rebbe Seder.
All the things that you hear from all the people, I saw, but I'm not. I saw it happen. I'll tell you some things from Rebbe Seder. The one thing that I really remember, and I don't know anybody else, I don't remember if anyone all these years, it's 60 years, it was Tavshin Chof Hei, the second night, I think. It was the second night. And while in the middle of Shulchan Aruch, at some stage, the Rebbe said, this was the Zega. What time is it? It looks like the Rebbe wanted to have the Afikoyim before Chatzos, even the second night. The Rebbe just said, what time is it? And the Yankov Katz, Olav Shalom, you heard of him? He was the one. He was a businessman in Chicago, inspired by the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he was a major supporter at a time when there was no people around that appreciated it. He gave a lot, and he was also the Baal Tefillah by Shainis Hashanah Rabbah, and he was the one that said the Haggadah on Pesach. He was the leader of the Seder. Earlier years, he didn't have a beard even. Later, he had a nice hunter's pole. So he said to the Rebbe, Afatul Fa'eit, 1:45, which means it was already summertime, so it means, but he just said to the Rebbe, Afatul Fa'eit. So the Rebbe said to him, Yitzchakta Zege Yom Tov? You wear a watch on Yom Tov? Like with a pella. And he said, no. But he pointed, I was near, at the doorway was the thermostat. and there was like a clock with hands, like the old-fashioned clock, like a little clock on the thermostat. He said, I saw it on the thermostat, 1:45. And I remember that because a lot of people don't realize that in Chabad we don't wear watches on Yom Tov. I heard from someone that the Frierdiker Rebbe once was a Yom Tov. People always wore it. Al Pi Halacha, it's not a problem. I think they should take a big plate or a big something, big keli, and everybody should put down their watches there on Yom Tov and pick them up after. Chabadi do not wear a watch on Yom Tov. Shabbos is a different story. Shabbos everyone understands. Shabbos because you don't wear a watch as a piece of jewelry. It's not a gold watch or something. You're wearing the watch till another time. One of the they used to say a simon on Shabbos. How do you know on Shabbos? How could you tell if the watch is a tachshit or just something you're carrying? They said, in case the watch stops, it's not going, would you wear it? If yes, then it means it must be made of, it's an accessory, it's gold, it's like women's watches, we used to be like that. Nowadays you don't find like this. So that was something you wore not because of carrying, of knowing the time, you wore it because it was a fancy thing. And if the person said, I wouldn't wear it once I don't know the time, it means you're wearing it in order to know the time, you're carrying it. But that's Shabbos. Yom Tov, you can find other hetedim. But it's not a Yom Tov thing to wear a watch. You can use the watch, you can hold it in front of you on the table, you look at the clock. Anyway, so that's one thing I remember, even though it's not of the Seder as such, but it's something that happened at a Seder. And that was the last time I was in New York before Tafshel Lamed, which was the last year that there was a Seder upstairs in the second floor. Another thing I remember seeing the Rebbe, eating the matzah, the morah. I remember hearing the Rebbe saying afterwards, Nishmas. It was a completely different type of. There is a tape somewhere of Rabbi Ofen from Israel, who remembers the Nusach very, very well. Exactly how the Rebbe said it. It was like you classically you hear Hasidish Yigin davening with a certain nigunim. That's how you heard the Rebbe saying Nishmas. Strongly and loud. It was like a very, very intense experience. Now, I remember something else. Until Tavshin Chav Daled, when the Rebbe Tzimchana, the Rebbe's mother, was with us, the Gashmias, at the end of the Seder, the Rebbe would walk her home. They would walk, I once followed them down Kingston Avenue. The Rebbe would walk one step behind his mother, like just half a step behind. He was always like in the front, sort of. And something which I never saw, but I heard from a not Klubavitch person, a rabbi in New York, a 95-year-old rabbi, and I heard it from younger light, younger guys, like 75-year-old, who saw, at my age, that's close to young. Anyway, so they said that the Rebbe would go home with the Rebbetzin that night from the Pesach, and they would meet. The Rebbetzin would wait by Union Street. They would, from Union Street, they would come together. That was where the Koila was. You know where the Koila building is? Behind 7-7. Pardon? What did you say?
He asked if the Rebbe stopped at
The what?
if the Rebbe stopped at other Sidorim
Stop.
to visit other Sidorim.
That's when did he stop?
He's asking if the Rebbe on the way home.
What?
On the way home.
No, the Rebbe went visited Sidorim before the Seder. And this was after the Seder. Now, but the second Seder, the Rebbe spoke on the Haggadah. It was Reich. It was Gan Eden. What happened? They finished the Seder. The Rebbe poured the. I saw this many times, but no one remember. Even Rebbe Yoel didn't remember the exact Seder. The Rebbe poured the wine into his becher, from his becher into the back and forth into the main bottle. It was, it was a whole Seder, and they sang Keliyata the whole time. And then they continued singing Keliyata the whole time. And the Rebbe went down. And then in previous years, the Rebbe walked his mother home. But every year, even afterwards, it was only a few more years, the Rebbe came down with a Haggadah. And he explained the Haggadah. There was Sichos. The Sichos of the second night of Pesach. Look at them, learn them, choose a year. 1 year is Muga in the Kultei Sichos because he asked about 6-7 questions and he gave one answer, which was the hezbollah of the whole Heilach Ma'anya, about the Indian of that Reich. But you look any year, take Chav Beis, Chav Gimel, the years that I was there, it was an incredible, and imagine that everybody's coming after the Seder. The Farbrengen started at about 2 o'clock in the morning and went for a couple of hours. And there was obviously no L'chaim, because you don't drink after the Seder, after Afikoyim. And it was unbelievable. But I'm going to tell you one that I remember, Tafshin Chof. I was with my father, Olav Shalom, in Williamsburg, so I walked probably with Simcha Zurkin, Olav Shalom. What? Yeah. Zayda. Simcha Yerachmiel?
Yeah.
Good guess. Wasn't a guess, don't worry. Anyway, so Simcha Zurkin is a guy, you know what he did on Nittel? He went to sleep at 4 o'clock, woke up at midnight, and learned the whole night. He was a masmid nifla. Anyway, so I walked with him. It's like people told me, you could walk in that through the whole Bedford Stuyvesant at 1 o'clock in the morning. But sometimes people said at 1 o'clock in the afternoon might have been more dangerous. Anyway, so we walked, and the Rebbe had a Farbrengen in the Zal upstairs. And it was the 200th anniversary of the Stalkers of the Baal Shem Tov, that Shavuos. The whole year the Rebbe was talking about the Baal Shem Tov, and it was a beautiful, and I remember that the Zal upstairs was not full by any means. I don't know if it was half full. It was packed together to be near the Rebbe. Very, very Reicha Farbrengen. So that was they used to call it the Seder noch the Seder. That's in the Yiddish press, not Lubavitch. The Jewish papers would call it the Seder noch the Seder. The Seder after the Seder. And so that's another thing which I remember very specially. Now I'll tell you something else which I remember, and I want to tell you a moedidike limud from a story that happened in Tafshin Chavdal, that I wasn't there. This one I heard from my brother-in-law, Rabbi Avraham Yaffe, in Manchester, Jaffe. That the Rebbe, it's known, did not go to the bakery on Erev Pesach for Matzah's Mitzvah. Many tzaddikim, many rabbeim went. I don't know why, but I heard from rabbis. I heard privately from Rabbi Zalman Shimon Dvorkin. He was the Rav, a big major chassid who learned in Lubavitch, goy in oilam, in halacha, in everything, in chassidus. He told me that the Rogat Shova never went Erev Pesach to the Matzah bakery. And they asked him, he was not a Rebbe, but he was the Rosh going. And they asked him, why don't you go? He said, because it's lo yimoled. I'm certainly going to find some kind of a pickbook. I'm going to find some kind of a question, and then I won't be able to eat the matzah. But here, the Torah gave them money, so it's free to eat. So I have an money on the people who gave me the matzah and said it's kosher. So I always think of that story, but we don't know for sure. But the Rebbe was mishtatet in the matzah's mitzvah by collecting the mayim shalonu the evening before. And Yud Gimel Nissan, in outside 770, there's a pipe with water, and the Rebbe comes there, and he had like a thing like this, but glass, like a little pitcher, without the pretzels, obviously. It was a special thing just used for Pesach. And there was a big jug, let's say 2-3 gallons maybe, I don't know. A jug maybe this size, glass jug. And the Rebbe would rinse it out quickly 3 times. He would rinse out the other one, and they sang Keliata, by the way, with the whole crowd outside there, and the Rebbe would pour in 3 little pitchers into the big jug. And now, that's known, and there's on Gem, you can see that in Gem. But what's not as well known is that the Rebbe also was mishtatif in matzahs for other places, especially Eretz Yisrael. They sent matzahs, that was usually based Nissan, I think, that the Rebbe would take the mayim shalonu, collect the mayim shalonu, and they baked matzah the next day. And also the Rebbe did it for the Bachrim matzah. So one year, they asked the Rebbe which day they should bake, the Bachrim should bake the matzahs. And the Rebbe said, on Tuesday. Dienstag. But then it turned out that the Rav HaMachshir was an elder Chosid, Rabbi Eliyahu Simpson, Rabbi Eliyahu Yaichel. He was the Gabri of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he was the Rav officially on the matzahs. So he told the Rebbe, would you mind if you do it if we bake on Monday? He had something was urgent on Tuesday that he had to do. So he asked the Rebbe, can we bake on Monday? And the Rebbe said, yeah, okay, let it be Monday. And that means that the Rebbe has to take the Mayim Shalonu on Sunday. You with me, everybody? Mm-hmm. Sunday night is Yechidus night. So the Rebbe got the Mayim Shalonu. The Seder with Yechidus night was that Rabbi Chadakov, a book should be written about him. But Rabbi Chadakov was but anywhere else he'd be a Rebbe himself. So he was a Mishichma Ulamaila. And as a Chosid. The Chosid of the Rebbe. And Rabbi Chadakov, at the end of every day, until one day he fainted, one night, just sitting there in the office, he would go into the Rebbe's room before the Rebbe went home. That was the last thing of the Rebbe's day, was a meeting with Rabbi Chadakov. It was sometimes 5-10 minutes, and it could be an hour. I understand that they made calls to Eretz Yisrael. They did whatever they did in that time. It was usually, 10-15 minutes. It was things that accumulated in the day, probably. That Rabbi Chadakov that was the Seder when he gave it over to the Rebbe. That's generally every day. So one day, he fainted, I think, about 3 a.m. or something, and the Rebbe told him that when it's very late, he should come. That was much later years, after my time at 770. Now, Rabbi Chadakov would go into the Rebbe before Yechidus. Yechidus would start at 8:30 at night. In the winter, it was already after Ma'ariv, but in the summer, there'd be a break somewhere in the middle, at about, it could be 9, 10, no, not 9, it would be about 10, 11, even 12, late at night, and there would be a break between two Yechidus for Ma'ariv. Before Yechidus started, about 8 o'clock in the evening, 8:15, Rabbi Chalakov went into Yechidus. And one of the things he brought was, I think, the list of who's coming in tonight. A list of the names of who's coming to Yechidus tonight. And he had this list. And then in the middle of Yechidus, maybe 10, 11 o'clock, Rabbi Chalakov would walk in again to the Rebbe to see if he wanted anything, any instructions. So this night, when they already took the Mayim Shalonu, Rabbi Chalakov goes in at 8:15. Mayim Shalonu is before the Shkia, about 6 o'clock. Shkia time. He goes into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "What's Hetzich with the Mayim Shalonu? What's happening with the Mayim Shalonu?" Which was a funny question, because he never asked it before. So Rabbi Chalakov said, they took it. The Bachrim took it. The Matzah Bakery was not on Albany like it is today. It was in the east side in Manhattan on Broome Street. Rabbi Shia Kof, Pinyakov's father, he was the head of it. Big chassid also. He was the head of that bakery. And it was on a building on the east side, which it was like in the basement of an apartment house or something. And it was pretty primitive. Like there were steps, stone steps, very steep, going down. And then there was the equipment, as it was in the early in the Yud. And so Rabbi Chalakov said they took the water and they went to the east side, finished. But later, a couple of hours later, Rabbi Chalakov went into Yechidus. In the middle of Yechidus, he would go in. So he went in, and he walked into the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe said, "Vos hetzich mit the Mayim Shalonu?" 2 times in one night. That the Rebbe should ask such a question. So he made a mental note that when I get back to my office, I'm going to phone up right away to find out what's happening at the Matzah Bakery. But he didn't have to bother. As he walked into the office, the phone was ringing. And the bacha, the mamuna, it might have been Beryl Futafas, that I'm not sure. There was a bacha who was in charge of the baking of the matzahs, and he was crying. They took this jug, the glass jug, and they're going down these steep stone steps, and it fell and it smashed. And they were mamish to shossen. And you can't get Mayim Shalom the same night. It has to be earlier. It's the Rebbe's water. Very, very upset. So Rabbi Chalakov said, I'll ask the Rebbe what to do. He went in, he told the Rebbe, that the Bacha was very upset, but it broke. What should we do? And then I gave a big smile and said, "Wir doch gesetzt für sein Dienstag." I said it's going to be Tuesday. Now, so I like that story. It's a beautiful story because the Rebbe didn't say, "Look, we have a plan B." The Rebbe said, "This was the plan. This was the lachatchila." In other words, I believe a part of it was he was addressing the bacha shouldn't be upset. Because the result of it is that instead of doing the Emet thing, you're doing the Chatchila thing. What a big story. A lot you can learn from it about sensitivity. I can do one more story.
Was the middle of the story.
Somebody else? Yeah.
You were in the middle of a story that the Rebbe went out of the Seder and he met the Rebbetzin on Union Street.
Excellent. I usually interrupt myself in the middle of how come? I never saw it. So I would imagine that the Rebbe stayed by her mother. And they had a prearranged time or something where she came down after 2 hours and she knew it'll be between 2 hours and 2.25 hours or something. Everything was very, very careful. The Rebbe once came out of the house on a Friday. It was late Friday night. The Rebbe hadn't come home, and she was worried. She came out, and she saw a bacher. And she asked, was there a Farbrengen tonight? So something she didn't know. He said, no. She said, where's the man? So she said to him, do you mind going and just checking everything's okay? It's 770. And this is like across the street on President Street. And they're walking to the corner. He said, okay. So the bacher starts walking. And the minute he gets to Brooklyn and President, they see the Rebbe turning the corner. So he started running away. So the Rebbe said, you don't leave a woman alone in New York streets at night. So the Rebbe was probably behind, by the koilel. Behind the koilel, it was like where they go for tashlich. That's where the place was, and they would meet there and went home. This I heard, I read about this. I never saw that. I saw with my eyes the Rebbe walking home in Tovshechov Dalid with the Rebbe Tzimchana. Also, Reb Shimon Lazarov, you heard of him? He went to buy fish. So, if Shimon Lazarov was asked by Rabbi David Raskin to be boidik chometz for the Rebbe Tzimchana. She lived in a small apartment in the back, the bottom floor in 1418 President. And he did it. A couple of years. And Tavshich Dalid, I heard this from Shimon himself. Tavshich Dalid, when he finished the B'dikas Chometz, he told the Rebbe Tzimchana, Emirtz Hashem Ibn Ayor, please God, next year. And the Rebbe said, next year you'll have to Shemachem Fazich. Next year you'll make your own B'dikas Chometz in your own house. In other words, you'll be married. And the interesting thing is that the Rebbe was nostalgic, Rav Tishrei, 6 months later. And Shimon got engaged somehow around Purim. It worked out that he was just married then to do it. And as a matana for doing the B'dikas Chometz, somebody gave the Rebbe a talis cotton, a very special talis cotton. But it was cotton, it was not wool. But it was very mehuda and this, whatever, on all the levels. And the Rebbe gave it to Reb David Raskin. And he told him, give it to a bacher. So Reb David gave it to Shimon Lazarov as chaticha for having done the B'dikas Chometz. So I asked him if he wears it. You can always wear it together with another one. Like at the Rebbe's house, I think he maybe wore it in the Chasna. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Yes, I did. Okay, one more story. Then we wait for questions. What?
Which Haggadah did the Rebbe use?
The which?
Haggadah. By the Seder.
Which Haggadah did he use? The Rebbe had his Siddur, and the Rebbe had the Haggadah of the Arizal with him at the table. For the Farbrengen, he had the first print from Tavshin Vav of the Rebbe's Haggadah that he used when he explained parts of the Haggadah. It had like this Haggadah Shal Pesach was in red or orangish red. It was not just one color. It's the only sefer from Kahas of the Rebbe, where it said Haggadah for Pesach was in a different color, but it didn't have the cover. It didn't have the soft cover that they had. It was either that's how it came out, the original edition, or they ever had one without it. Maybe, you got the first print or the first. I'll digress for a minute. And last year, Gimel Tammuz, I was at the Oyel. And I met Rabbi Krinsky, Rabbi Yudel Krinsky, soll sein gesund. And he was there with his son, Shmaya. He was just coming from the Oyel. I actually had been there already before. I was there to give a talk. A Farbrengen in one of the buildings. It was the night of Yeraf Nissan. And he has a minor lotion, which the Rebbe used. The Rebbe's minor lotion. And it was in a special folder with plastic cover on each page. You had to turn just the plastic cover, so you never touched the actual page. He offered me to go in and use it. His minor lotion. But he told me this. I said, what's the story of it? He said that I was using this, and then they printed one of it's a small pocket size. It's the size of a pocket Tanya, let's say, that the length and the width. And then they printed one which was the size like a regular size. So they had two. There used to be two. You remember two different minor lotions. So he got the Rebbe a new one. One which was bigger and easier to read, and then, not ripped or anything. And he gave it to the Rebbe when he took him to the oil. So the Rebbe took the old one that he had, and he gave it to Yudel, and he said, "Nah." That's all he said. Nah. The Yudel told me the story. So he said he had a suffix. When the Rebbe said, "Nah," does that mean put it where it's supposed to go, in the library and where it is, or does it mean it's yours? And he didn't know what it was. He said about 5 months later, his car got stolen. So we went to the Yichidus. He told the Rebbe, my car got stolen. The Rebbe's first answer was the minor lotion in it? So then he knew it was his. Because it was his car. The Rebbe asked him, was the minor lotion in it? The minor lotion wasn't in it. But for that he understood that he can keep it. Just on the side. Al Koponim, so that the Haggadah that Rebbe used was one of the Haggadahs that Rebbe put out. There was 1 year when they printed a run of these, the small little Haggadah, the small little tiny Haggadahs really. They printed that plain, simple Haggadah, a big edition of it. Really, they did it because for the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin to use. But they felt if they're going to tell the Rebbe to make you a big one, So what they did, they made maybe 100 copies. I don't know how many copies. It was actually reprinted later on, but the original idea was for the Rebbe to use. So they already made a run, and I have one of those at home. And the Rebbe, so 1 year he used that. I know at least 1 year after Chavei Shvat, the Rebbe used at least 1 year a Haggadah, not the very thick one, but one of the Haggadahs of the Rebbe with a lot of pages, with Sichos already. And I know that because the person who had it lent it to me for the Seder 1 year. If somebody lent it to somebody who has it, whatever, that person probably sent it out, whatever. Now, one more story. And then if anybody has a question, I'll believe they to try to answer. If not, I'm not coughed once since we started. Maybe if I stay a few more hours. All of us are Anyway, So, this is a story which I heard from a different Mukhut. Not the right port. This was from the Kessler. Well, but it's also Posner. Kessler. He's Mechutton of my daughter and son-in-law. His name is Yossi Kessler in Montreal. A Chassidish Yid B'Tachlis. Comes from a Vishnitzer family originally. And somehow or another we made a deal. We haven't worked on it lately, but that when we meet, I tell him a story of the Rebbe, and he tells me a story of the Rebbe. And I think he might even phone me from Canada. He got a story that the person told him, who heard it from his father, Shver, or from, also it's similar with the mice, with the matzah. This person had a wine wholesale business in Vienna. A wholesale business of wine in Vienna. And they dealt with a lot of, big shops and companies and hotels. He was a Fruma Yid, obviously, and he would provide, if an individual of Yid came to get a case of wine, not a bottle, but if it was a case of something, he would give them, but he would not arrange, he delivered for companies and hotels, but for an individual, he did not deliver, but he gave them the special wholesale price. Now one day, the Friedrich Rebbe was in Austria for Yom Tov. And the Rebbe always came to the Friedrich Rebbe for Yom Tov, not in Vienna, but it was in a suburb of Vienna. And the Friedrich Rebbe sent the Rebbe to get the wine. And the Rebbe went to this a wine place, and the man thought, he saw right away that this man is, I don't want to use the same word I used to Rabbi Chanukah, B'shich Mayomai, but he saw that this man is something, holy. But on the other hand, most people of Chassidish Yidden came with payas, with Shmoyne Begodim, and they became dressed in like a more modernish style. But he could tell that this is not, this is a cover. But he didn't ask. He was polite. He didn't ask the Rebbe. And he said, what do you need? He said, I need 3 cases of this, 2 of that, whatever. He gave him the order. And he said, it will be ready for you tomorrow at 11 a.m. or whatever time. And you'll have to arrange transport to pick it up. And the Rebbe said, fine. He had to take it to the train station. To take it to the town where the Friedrich Rebbe was for Yom Tov. The next morning, this wine merchant, whose son or Adam told the story to Kessler, told to me, comes to shul for Shacharis, and he sees the Rebbe sitting there and was learning or was davening. He's in the shul. So he went over to the gabbai of the shul, and he says, because he was wondering what, this paradox. He said, do you know who that man is? So he said, I'll tell you a story. This man came to shul yesterday, Mincha Ma'ariv. You know the story? He said he came yesterday evening. He davened with a minyan, and then he took out a Gemara, he took out a Sefer, and he was intensely learning. And he sat there for hours. Came about 6, 7 o'clock, and it was 11 o'clock at night. And I'm the gabbai, I got to lock the building. So I went to him at 11 o'clock, and I said, Rabbi Yid, it's time to go. He said, please let me stay here. And he said, I have to lock the building. And if you stay, I have to stay. So the Rebbe told him, lock me in. Lock the building, I'll stay in here. And he begged me. So I said, okay. And so I did. And at 5:30 this morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I came in. He was still sitting in the same sefer, in the same intense concentration. So I asked him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm the Edom of Lubavitcher Rebbe." He tells this to the wine merchant. So the wine merchant walked over to the Rebbe, and he says, "I'll get it delivered to the train station." I worked out which train, where you're going. It's all in my hand. I'm going to do it. Now, this is in the 1940s, in 1930s. Then it came to Muhammad, and this wine merchant survived, also. And he came to America. I don't know if he came to live, but he certainly came to visit. And he went to see the Farbrengen Rebbe. So when he walked into Yechidus by Farbrengen Rebbe, the Farbrengen Rebbe said, in Yiddish he told him, I have to give you 2 Yosher Koyachs. Hat anerkennt, wer ist mein Edom, und hat ihm verspot a Tirche. You recognized who my son-in-law is, and you saved him a bother. That's the story. What do you think, Meise? You can use it in Caracas. Yeah, that's my Pesach story.
Yeah. Everyone outside? Somebody went to the door?
No.
Somebody went to the door?
Somebody went. It's not one of the. At the Rebbe's table, every Yom Tov, there was at that table, there was a million, approximately, just about a million, by invitation. So was the Rebbe, there was Rashag, there was a man called Itchik Churgin, who was a Zohar Begar in Eretz Yisrael one year, and he never left New York. He stayed there. He was a very, very sweet guy. And then there was, and then there would be some chassidim, but then there was also the waiters. There would be a couple of bachrim who would serve. So they were part of that. So one of them, I think, went out. I don't recall it. Yeah. The Rebbe went out after Memtes, Nun Alef. The Rebbe went out those 3 years. The first time he went out, there was a handful of people there. But then the word got around that the Rebbe came out, so the next night there was about 100 people there. Okay. They all speeded up the Seder, or they didn't start it until after the finished. I remember myself, I would never have grape juice for a kid or anything, but the second Seder, I would use grape juice, or have grape juice, because I wanted to be alert by the sichos. I remember there was an atmosphere, but every Farbrengen of the Rebbe was mamish like an Eden. I remember just Shabbos in the summer. Crown Heights had thousands and thousands of families of not Lubavitch people. In the middle of the summer, I remember such a Shabbos. Maybe I was in Koilel then. I remember walking down Brooklyn Avenue, and the people going for Shabbos walks and stuff like that. I said, I don't understand how somebody could live here and not come in and taste Gan Eden. Kipshuta. It's like a different world. You ask yourself afterwards, it developed. It is regular. It's just a regular world. That was, the kind of question. And you can taste it if you take a tape of a Farbrengen and listen to it 3-4 times. You don't have to do it dafke. Let's say you take a year off Nissan Farbrengen. And you do over the next half a year. Make it clear, listen to a sikha twice a week, whatever. And again, and you realize it's not just information. It's an experience. But having said that, the Farbrengens, the Siches of the Seder, after the Seder, was special. And for that you can check on it, look in the Hanochas. I remember when they spoke about the story. He told a story other time also, Pashtas Va'era, Tovshem Memalaf, I think it was. The story about a Yid. The Rebbe Rashab was going on holiday, was going to Dacha, to vacation, together with a maskil. And the maskil sees Lubavitcher Rebbe, the greatest Talmud Chacham, the greatest son. He wanted to know about Malachim. He questioned whether Malachim exist altogether. He questioned, is there such a thing, or is it just a fantasy? The whole existence of Malachim. And the Rebbe Rashab, as they were in this coach, explained it to him on all different types of levels. And it was Zichronos gelegt, and he wasn't convinced, this maskil. So then the Rebbe Rashab said to him, you know, we're now going to Dacha. In this journey, there are 3 machshavas. There are 3 machshavas. Right? He says, there's the machshava of you and me. What's our machshava? What's your intention? What's your purpose? What's your mindset? Your mindset is you work hard a whole year, and you need a break to be able to come back to work. So that's why you are now in this thing. So that's one machshava. Then there's the coachman, the balagola. Might be a guy, might be whatever it is. He is earning a living. He's a taxi driver. His machshava is zolna mafarnes b'nei beisai. Our is the intellectual thing. The wagon driver has in mind parnos of his family, and then there's the machshava of the ferd, the horses that are leading the coach. What's their machshava? So they used to have, the horse wants to get to its destination where it's going to get straw, hay to eat. He wants to eat some hay. But in order to make the horse reminded that that's what you're going for, so to give him like the motivation to keep on going, they would have a long pole, and at the end of the pole was a big piece, a chunk of hay. So the horse, the whole way there, was reminding me, I'm going for the hay, and it's getting to the So the Rebbe said to the maskil, he says, the machshava of us, and there's the machshava of the balagola, and there's machshava of the fed. And then he said, I'll say in Yiddish first, see, then, weil the fed tracht habe, is the malach kein malach nicht. Just because the horse only knows how to think about hay, does that mean that the malach is not a malach? What he was telling him is that every person has in themselves a pnimi, and a practical, and a fed. And that the malachim exist. But if you're living on the level of a fed, that's what you're not a keli, you're not a receptacle. You don't take it in. But that doesn't affect, the Rebbe is like saying, I know there's a malachim. I heard that story from the Rebbe a number of times, which has made him. Different aspects. One was a Pashtas Va'era when I was visiting there one year. But if you look at this, it's in a Pesach, I think it's, and the Rebbe said, because the night of the Seder, the Satan doesn't operate. HaSatan is B'gematria 364. I think. I'm just remembering it now from 60 years ago. I never worked it out since then, but I think it is. If it's 365, it's night of Pesach, Even there was a group of Ganovim in Lubavitch, Jewish, but on Seder night they didn't steal. The Rebbe was speaking about the special order that's there. If you don't feel it, it's because the Fed is only thinking about Hava. Because if you would sensitize yourself to be able to appreciate a more subtle existence, and certainly a more spiritual existence, and certainly a more godly existence, a more elikus existence, you appreciate it. It's something you have to cultivate it. You have to work on it. You have to learn the Rebbe Sikha. Take a Sikha of the Rebbe, a Pesach, the second night Seder. It's now 2 weeks from the first day of Pesach today. An abed day. Work on that. Take one Sikha and go over it 5-10 times. Or at least 4 times. You'll see it's a different Pesach. Within Kedusha Gufa. Yitzias Mitzrayim is Mitzrayim de Kedusha. Okay? Time to call it a day.
I have one more question, Rebbe.
What?
I have another question, Rebbe.
What?
I have a question.
Good.
I mean, it could be it's more...
He's going to keep me till 3 in the morning here with his question. Yeah. Yeah. You was...
So, I mean, it's maybe a more basic question.
But, yeah.
But it's the other...
I'm running this. I can look after it. I actually hear, if I go like this, I can hear.
It's
better.
Mitzrayim, the Yidden were slaves, and then Hashem took them out of Mitzrayim, and Hashem basically gave them Torah mitzvahs. The Chayra, it seems like, they were slaves to Mitzrayim, and then now they were so to speak slaves to Hashem. So what's the idea of the freedom of Pesach? Like, obviously there's a difference, but it seems like you're slaves to one person and slave to another person. How do you...
It's a mighty, beautiful question.
Because also I feel like sometimes...
It's a beautiful question. But then the answer to that question is an answer to all existential problems of life. Because what that question is saying is that everybody is really a slave. People say, I do whatever I want. They call a yid, they say, fry's out. Fry means free. He's free. You're enslaved and he's free. But that person is mamish. They said he was once an apikoidus, and they gave him an aliyah in the shul. And he was saying, he was saying it with such a kavanah, more than any, the biggest. So they told him, he says, they tell him, why do you say it with such kavanah? He said, I'm thanking God for giving the Torah to the Yidden, because if he gave it to Goyim, I would have to do it. He said, I only do things that the Goyim do. He says, so thank God you gave it to the Yidden. Anyway, but the truth is your choice. Nobody creates, really. You choose who you want to follow and what you want to follow. And the Eibishter says, if you ein lecha ben choydin elami shoisik b'Torah, that's the deepest fulfillment of yourself. Is to know that you're doing what you were created for. It's like the whole purpose of existence. So that's the one enslavement, which is really coming home. It's the specialist genius doctor that says this is exactly the medicine for you. In other words, that's how you yourself are expressed, and anything else, there's automatically a tension, and there's a tenseness and an angst in the person. A person who works on this, and he knows this is what I'm there where Hashem wants me to be, and that's what I am and where I am. It's all clicking together. The Maral says about Pesach. There's another question, not if you become a slave to Hashem, but he said, what's the big deal if we're in Golus now anyway? And he gives there's a mashal about a person. Well, the mashal is maybe from the Dubna Market, but the word is that by Matan Torah, the Yidden didn't just become, they became be'etzem b'nei Chodesh. In other words, they are, the Jewish people are free. Even if they might be enslaved. Someone who's in Auschwitz, somebody who knew what they are and who they are, what happens to you, you have no control over. What you do with it, you have total control over. And that's called freedom. It means being your own person. Rebbe Mendel Futterfast told me once that they had to get up at, I think they had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the Gulag. And 6 to 9 they would walk in the darkness to the forest. They would chop wood. They were making timber. He wanted to daven. So every night there was a different prisoner who had to stay up the whole night as the OD, who was on guard for the whole barrack. And that person next day didn't have to go to work. So Reb Mendel asked whoever was OD, wake me up at 4 a.m. or whatever it was, earlier time. And that guy was happy. I go to sleep an hour earlier. And I'll be the OD and I'll be awake and I'll be... So, and there was also one of the police, from the system, from the prison system, who would come mizman l'zman. So one time, Reb Mendel is davening, and in comes at 5 in the morning, or 4 in the morning, comes the prison, the head, this guy, and he's there, we're sitting with a talis, tefillin. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm praying." He says, "Didn't help you much, did it?" So he said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You are imprisoned. He says, "You're imprisoned by the same system I am." He said, "You're also a prisoner." In other words, knowing you're in a prison is already a gula. Because your mind is still yours. And your actions are still yours. It's still your choice. It's tremendous Reichkeit. Yeah.
Because I'll tell you,
Pardon?
because I tell you, a lot of times people, kochen Kabbalas oil. You should have a geschmack in Kabbalas oil. And it says, Kabbalas oil is doing something you don't want to do. And how do you find that geschmack? What you're saying is that, like...
There's a secular book on this thing by Viktor Frankl. There was that person who was a survivor. He was a Jew, assimilated. Actually, what didn't realize is that he was late in tefillin every day. They never had a kesher with him. Found out later on. But anyway, that's from a secular source. But he was a psychiatrist before the war in Vienna, and he noticed how people reacted, and he saw that the deepest koyach is not what Freud said, that the deepest koyach is ala taivus, and he said the deepest koyach of a person is a sense of meaning. He said the people who had meaning, he said he was a religion. I'm going to have to go and tell my uncle what happened to me. That made people survive. People survive if there was a reason, if there was a meaning to their life. It's the biggest gift. The Gemara says in Eidavid, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had a machlokes. If noyach loy la'odem shenivra, or noyach loy shaloi nivra. Is it better that a person was created, or better that they were not created? And they spent 2.5 years discussing this. V'nimnu v'gomru, and at the end they concluded, noyach loy la'odem shaloi nivra. Better if he were not created. V'achshav shenivra is your fashfesh b'maisro you mashmesh b'ma two yesois. Now that he's created, be careful what he's doing. Now I got a phone call once from a guy in Flatbush. He's a single relative, not Lubavitch, but I met him, unfortunately on a shiva, whatever. And he met me and he called me up. He was preparing for, it was in Elul. He's preparing for Yom Tov. And he went to the Machzor. That story is in the Ashkenaz, or Sfad, Avoida, Yom Kippur. It's not in our Nusach. There is a hint of it in our Nusach, but not there's. So he asked me one question, this guy. You know what his question was? He asked me a moididike question. He said, what took them 2.5 years? That's what he wants to know. The Gemara doesn't even say which of the two it was. The Rebbe says in a Sikha which it was. It's in one of the Sikhas of Project Liquid Sikhas this year. I think it was Bechul Koisai, where the Rebbe brings down that Gemara and anyway. But he asked me, what's there to take 2.5 years? You're an optimist. You're right away. Or he said, let me think about it for an hour, or a day, or a week. 2.5 years. And I asked him, he said, I'm driving to work from Flatbush to New Jersey. I have a 1-hour drive. I said, I have to give you a whole background. The Gemara does not say, Toiv loy lo'odam shenivru. By the way, this is in L'Kuti Torah, in the Hagoi, in the Maimah, in Pashas Re'eh. This particular word, the Alter Rebbe says, Chas v'sholom, to say, loy toiv shenivru. Doesn't say is it good. It says, is it noyach? The word noyach means, is it comfortable? Is it comfortable to have been created? That was the question. And that is a real question. Because comfortable means to do something that you want to do. No boss. No, I'm not a slave to a person. I'm not a slave to God or to everybody. Try. Comfortable means sleep 8 hours at night, uninterrupted. That's comfortable. Now, what do you do if 3 o'clock in the morning your best friend calls you up and says, "I need you"? Got a flat tire, or you got a problem somewhere, and that person is mamish, really in bad shape. And you, that day, you just had a power cut. Tomorrow you have a major interview. This, that. It always comes at the least convenient time. And what do you do? What do you do? So you get up and you do it. It's not noyach loy. But you're doing the right thing. And if you work on yourself, you'll have a tainug in the Kabbalah soil. In other words, it's not pshat, it'll be loy noyach. It'll become pleasurable. Thank God my friend has me to be able to help him. You work on it. These are different levels of consciousness. I told him, like in Yiddishkeit, a beautiful Shabbos table. Somebody in Stanford Hill once told me, how do you invite these guys with long hair and jeans and tattoos and nose rings to come to a Shabbos table? You're trying to bring up a generation of children and your beautiful tablecloth with silver candlesticks. That's noyach. You're supposed to do it, and you do it. Loy noyach is your friend. Your friend is Shabbos Kodesh. Your friend is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Your friend is the Rebbe. And he says, get a Yosher Koyach from the Rebbe because he went and helped another Yid make Pesach. Somebody called me up in Stanford Hill. This is an emerson story. You knew I worked my first 10 years in England. Here now, it'll soon be 60 years. So 50 years I'm a principal in the school. 10 years I worked with students. I was teaching, but I was working with students, with young people, with this kind of thing. So somebody phoned me up within those 10 years. A very nice guy, and I knew him very well. A young guy. And he says, look, I have nobody coming to me for my Pesach Seder. I made a whole bunch of chidushim. could you please find me a student or a young person who needs a Seder, but I need somebody who will understand my Dvar Torah, my Chidushim, and doesn't have long hair. Those are his two conditions. So I said, Rabbi Yankiv, people with short hair and who understand Chidushim, they have where to go. You know, we're trying there to find a place, somewhere to go. Ashreinu ma'toim chalkeinu. Ashreinu ma'toim chalkeinu. The Rebbe gives such a clarity. There's no problem in how. There's no problem how the people today, the young generation, if they who are not keeping, it's not because it's hard for them. Because they don't see the meaning or the beauty or the importance. Jonathan Sachs, Allah Shalom, he was one of the students I used to deal with. But he said, if people, you want to make the religion easier for people, make all kinds of concessions and dispensations and kulas, everything else. He said the two most popular festivals amongst the most secular people is Yom Kippur and Pesach, Seder night. And here you cannot eat anything altogether, and here it's a complete different kind of a diet. It's not what's comfortable, but it means something to them. That's why they want it. Chaim. Okay, good. When was the last time that Erev Pesach fell on Shabbos? When? When was the previous? Huh? Anybody remembers it?
No.
Nobody remembers. Machor. It was all of your living memory. What came first? The lockdown of COVID, or the most recent Erev Pesach Shechal B'Shabbos?
Pei Alef. He said Pei Alef.
It was in Tovshin Pei.
I said COVID.
It's fine.
COVID was first, was Pei, the lockdown. But here, the Pei Alef, it was restrictions. When's the next one? If Mashiach doesn't come, according to the calendar, 20 years. When I'm 105. Invite me for your Seder. Anyway, so listen.
Yeah, is that guaranteed?
Excuse me. Everybody can.
We'll see.
Everybody can.
There'll be a lot of things, a lot of big simchas till then. Only simchas till then. Gesund. Veilige hate. So here, this is 4 years ago. So it was not a lockdown, but it was distancing. We couldn't have any help in our house. They used to deliver groceries to us elderly people. They delivered this stuff Thursday evening from one of our Talmidos and her daughter, one of our Talmidos, would come to our house every Thursday evening and drop off the stuff for the week, and with no help in the house. So for Pesach, when we make Pesach, I do approximately maximum 1% of the work in that house. But that year, it was social distancing, so I had to do at least 2 or 3%, like peel potatoes and mop floors, stuff, there was nobody else as me like this. But I could go out, I said, sure, I said, this is Erev Pesach, it's distancing, so nobody's in the house. 3-day Yom Tov. You have to get everything ready for the Seder. It's Erev Pesach afternoon. I went to Tasty Pizza, and they make the pita bread, because you have to have challah which doesn't have crumbs. Pita doesn't have crumbs, but it's mezonis, which I don't eat, believe it. But they made that year, especially, I'm sure they'll do it this year too, he made specially hamoitzi pita. So that hardly has any crumbs. And I'm there, I just remember where I was, and I remember that I was wearing plastic gloves. I don't know what I was doing of the different 2% jobs, whatever. But the phone rings. a long distance overseas call. The man who called is the most beautiful, beautiful Jew. But he never ever phoned me before then, and has not, and that I remember, and I don't think he ever phoned me since. I met him when he's a teacher, of bar mitzvah boys, and I spoke in this town, and they asked me to visit the classes. I saw him teaching Gemara. I was so impressed. I was impressed with his ahava for the Talmidim, and he showed me he had a little pad. He had a name of every Tosfos in that Masechta they were doing, and it was like a chart, something like your father would have. And which Tosfos, which Bacha was capable. That was his level. This was this, that. He had a really beautiful person. And Achron Shel Pesach, I was there once or twice, and he chazan a maimah for about 45, like a long maimah in English, the American guy, about 60 years old. And he called me up, and he said, Rabbi Lou, you have a couple of minutes. I have a problem. Tell us what your problem. Erev Shabbos, which is Erev Pesach, this must be really, really serious. I get called the whole time. Every day. I got called this evening. 15 minutes when I left the house. I said, sure, what's the problem? He says, the Haggadah. The Haggadah is your problem? I said, what's your problem? He says, the Ben Rosh. I said, what's your problem? And he screamed, why give him a label? Why do you label him? And it hit me, mamish. When I thought it over, I was mamish, a lump in I was ready for tears. Not because of the question, but because that this is what bothers the guy in Erev Pesach. He suddenly, and this guy is a Talmid Chacham Gadol, he knows the Zichronos also. And he's bothered by this. And so it forced me to have to come up with something quickly to be able to go back to my 2% as well. It became Balzan Yontif. So what I told him was music on the Sikh of the Rebbe. From Pesach, Tafshin Yud Beis, I think it's the same. But it's based on what the Frierdiker Rebbe said. I said to him, the Rebbe told us that it does not say in the Haggadah, Keneged Abo, Bonim, Dibra, Torah, Chacham, Rosh, Tam, She'en Yidei Lishol. That's what it does not say. What does it say? It says, Keneged Abo, Bonim, Dibra, Torah, Echad Chacham, Echad Rosh, Echad Tam, Echad She'en Yidei Yishol. The Echad is the Hashem Echad, the Neshama. That's the essence of every Jew. I say Russia is not his label. Echad is his label. It's everyone's label. Why does it say Russia? It's telling this man, Mr. Russia, you think you're a Russia, you're not. That's the kind. You don't realize what you yourself really are and what you have. You're in an echad, just like the biggest tzaddik in the world. Is that a good answer? About 5 years later, I met this guy. And I said, you never told me if you, he said that was just the right answer for him at that moment. I didn't, but Shas Ma'aseh, I was just trying to get off the phone. But it's a what? So how do you recognize the echad in the other person? Every time you're going on Mitzvah, you're going to people whose lifestyle you would never choose. But they're the most important person in the world because the Rebbe taught us that person has an echad that's waiting to be coaxed out from the hiding. L'chaim. We should see Mashiach Tzidkenu before this Yud Alef Nisan, before Shacharis of Beis Nisan even. L'chaim.